Here is your script with the new portion appended exactly where it ends. Yeah, honestly, I've been working really hard to get back to full health, and I feel like probably over these last couple weeks is when I've probably started feeling my best. Obviously, my ankle kind of the moment she was drafted. Everyone thought the franchise was saved. But nobody could have predicted that the most celebrated rookie in basketball history would be plotting an escape route just months into her professional career. Fans noticed the eye rolls, the frustrated sighs, and the disconnected body language on the court. But the real story was happening where the cameras couldn't reach. Whispers have been pouring out of the locker room about a fractured relationship that has completely deteriorated, leading to one of the most shocking power struggles the league has ever seen. It started as a dream scenario, a generational talent ready to elevate a struggling team to championship glory. But it quickly devolved into a toxic environment of clashing egos, alleged punishments, and a coaching staff that seemed completely unprepared for the phenomenon they had just inherited. People expected growing pains, but they didn't expect outright warfare between a star player and the people hired to guide her. The tension has reached an absolute boiling point, and the rumors circulating suggest that an explosive ultimatum has been delivered directly to the front office. But to understand how things got so unbelievably bad, so incredibly fast, you have to look at the very first moments she stepped onto the hardwood in a professional jersey. Indiana was supposed to be a basketball haven, a place where a Midwest prodigy could naturally transition into the ultimate professional icon. Instead, the reality of the situation hit like a freight train, exposing a deep-rooted organizational incompetence that no amount of sold-out arenas could hide. The hype surrounding her arrival was entirely unprecedented, bringing charter flights, massive television deals, and a level of global scrutiny the league had never experienced in its entire history. You would assume a franchise gifted this kind of golden ticket would do absolutely everything in their power to cater to her strengths, protect her at all costs, and build a system that allowed her to thrive immediately. But what played out on national television week after week was the exact opposite. It was a masterclass in mismanagement, a startling display of a traditional coaching staff desperately trying to force a revolutionary talent into an outdated, suffocating box. The disconnect wasn't just a minor bump in the road. It was a fundamental clash of basketball ideologies that threatened to derail the most lucrative career the sport had ever seen before it even truly began. And the very first signs of this catastrophic failure didn't start with the playbook. They started with how the team reacted when their superstar was physically attacked on the court. The transition from college to the pros is always brutal, but the physical punishment handed out to this particular rookie was entirely unprecedented, and it exposed a massive flaw in the team's leadership. Opposing teams weren't just playing tough defense. They were sending a message, utilizing aggressive traps, hard fouls, and relentless full-court pressure to rattle the newcomer. Veterans around the league felt disrespected by the media circus surrounding her. And they took that frustration out on her ribs, her ankles, and her jaw every single night. Everyone watching expected her team to rally around her, to establish an enforcer mentality, and to protect their golden ticket at all costs. In any other sport, if you take a cheap shot at the franchise player, the rest of the roster is clearing the bench to make sure it never happens again. Instead, fans were stunned by the coaching staff's bizarrely passive reaction to the nightly beatings. When controversial hits occurred, the head coach was often seen standing with her arms crossed, offering no fiery defense, no screaming at the officials, and no tactical adjustments to punish the aggressive defenses. There were moments where she was blatantly shoved to the hardwood well after the whistle, and the sideline remained entirely motionless. Post-game press conferences became incredibly awkward, with leadership offering generic statements about needing to be tougher, subtly shifting the blame onto the rookie for not adapting quickly enough to the professional physicality. This lack of vocal support felt like a massive betrayal to a player who was used to an environment where the entire program was built around mutual trust and fierce protection. The failure to shield her wasn't just a physical issue, it was a psychological one that planted the very first seeds of deep resentment. She was taking the hits for the entire league's financial growth, absorbing the jealousy of seasoned veterans, and looking over at a bench that seemed completely indifferent to her suffering. But the physical battering was only the tip of the iceberg, because a much deeper. The script currently ends at, because a much deeper. Send the next section and I will continue from that exact point while preserving the same tone and structure. Continuing your script from the exact point where it ended. More systemic problem was brewing every time they stepped on the court to run an offensive set. The real friction began in the playbook, where two entirely different basketball philosophies collided in a catastrophic way. On one side, you had a revolutionary guard whose entire identity was built on lightning-fast transitions, deep transition threes, and a free-flowing offense that trusted her elite court vision and improvisational genius. She didn't just play the game, she manipulated it, seeing passing lanes and scoring angles that nobody else in the building could comprehend. On the other side, you had a head coach deeply rooted in an old-school, grinded-out, defensively rigid system that demanded slow half-court sets and heavy structural control. It was like putting a Ferrari engine into a tractor and wondering why it wasn't winning races on the track. Night after night, viewers watched in complete disbelief as the offense devolved into a stagnant mess with the ball routinely taken out of the rookie's hands during crucial possessions. Play calls from the sidelines seemed designed to restrict her rather than unleash her, leading to incredibly frustrating sequences where she was forced to stand in the corner as a decoy while less efficient players forced bad shots. The frustration was impossible to hide, manifesting in thrown-up hands, shaking heads, and icy glares directed at the bench after broken plays. Basketball analysts began tearing the coaching strategy apart on national television, pointing out that the staff was failing entirely to utilize the greatest offensive weapon they had ever been given. Every time the pace quickened and the rookie tried to push the tempo, a timeout would be called, stopping the momentum dead in its tracks just to set up a grinding, incredibly predictable half-court play. The disconnect was glaring, and it was only a matter of time before the silent frustration transformed into vocal outrage. She wasn't just dealing with growing pains, she was dealing with a systematic suppression of the very skills that made her a global phenomenon. And what happened behind closed doors next would completely change the trajectory of the season and push the relationship past the point of no return. Rumors began leaking from inside the organization that film sessions and private meetings had turned into incredibly tense battlegrounds. The rookie, known for her insanely high basketball IQ, allegedly stopped biting her tongue and started questioning the lack of offensive adjustments directly to the coaching staff. Sources whispered about heated exchanges where she pointed out the glaring flaws in their spacing, the predictability of their sets, and the sheer incompetence of running a slow-paced offense with a roster built for speed. Calling out a professional coach is a massive taboo for any rookie, but this wasn't a normal rookie. This was the player carrying the financial weight of the entire league on her shoulders. She knew the offense was broken. She knew the fans saw it, and she allegedly demanded better schemes that didn't leave her constantly trapped by double teams with no outlet pass. She was facing blitzes and face guards that extended 94 feet across the court, and the coaching staff was providing zero tactical relief. No screens were being set to free her up. No off-ball movement was designed to punish the aggressive traps. And she was essentially being told to figure it out on her own against the most elite defenders in the world. For a coaching staff trying to establish authority and prove they were in charge, this level of insubordination and tactical questioning was a massive blow to their egos. Instead of taking the feedback, adapting the playbook, and collaborating with their generational point guard, the leadership allegedly viewed this as a direct challenge to their power. They were determined to prove that their system was bigger than any single player, creating a toxic power struggle where ego took precedence over actually winning basketball games. The coaching staff felt they needed to send a definitive message to regain control of the locker room, leading to a highly controversial decision that would ultimately break the internet and spark a massive media firestorm. Fans and analysts alike were completely baffled when the team's best player suddenly started seeing her minutes mysteriously restricted during the most critical moments of tightly contested games. Disguised under the incredibly flimsy excuses of foul trouble, fatigue, or defensive matchups, the coaching staff began benching their superstar exactly when she was needed the most. There were games where the offense would go completely cold in the fourth quarter, desperately needing a spark to close a shrinking deficit. Yet, the camera would pan to the bench to show the franchise player sitting there with a towel over her shoulders, looking absolutely furious. She would stare at the floor, chewing on her lip. Send the next section, and I'll continue from. She would stare at the floor, chewing on her lip. Exactly where the segment ends. Continuing from the exact point where the script ended. Radiating a level of competitive anger that was palpable through the television screen. This wasn't strategic load management. Many insiders speculated this was a calculated punitive measure designed to remind the rookie exactly who held the ultimate authority. It was a classic old-school coaching tactic, benching the star to prove a point about compliance, defensive effort, and system obedience. But trying to discipline a generational icon in front of millions of heavily invested fans backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. Social media erupted with outrage, calling for the coach's immediate dismissal, while the players' camp silently watched the blatant disrespect unfold on national broadcasts. The sheer audacity of benching the one player responsible for selling out arenas across the country showed a shocking lack of self-awareness from the coaching staff. It was a massive insult not just to the player, but to the millions of fans who paid exorbitant ticket prices specifically to watch her perform only to see her sidelined for a crucial fourth-quarter stretch because of a petty power trip. The optics were utterly disastrous, creating a daily circus for sports talk shows that dissected every single substitution, every timeout, and every exasperated sigh on the sideline. But the tension didn't just stay between the coach and the star. It rapidly infected the rest of the roster, creating a deeply uncomfortable dynamic for everyone wearing the jersey. The atmosphere inside the locker room allegedly became incredibly awkward, creating a silent divide that forced teammates to walk on eggshells on a daily basis. The veteran players found themselves stuck in an impossible, completely unfair position, caught in a tug-of-war between a traditional coach demanding obedience and a revolutionary teammate who fundamentally understood the game better than the staff did. During media availability, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. When reporters asked teammates about the controversial coaching decisions, the offensive struggles, or the aggressive fouls against the rookie, the responses were heavily guarded, filled with uncomfortable pauses, and rehearsed PR statements that said absolutely nothing. Nobody wanted to openly mutiny against the coach who controlled their playing time, but nobody wanted to alienate the superstar who was quite literally elevating their platforms, securing them charter flights, and paying their bills through massive increases in league revenue. This lack of a unified front only isolated the rookie further, making her feel like she was fighting a solo battle against an organization that was completely ill-equipped to handle her level of greatness. Whispers suggested that she felt entirely alone in a building she was supposed to call home, surrounded by a staff that resented her unprecedented fame, and teammates who were too afraid of professional retaliation to speak up in her defense. It was a psychological pressure cooker, dealing with the expectations of the entire sports world while simultaneously fighting a civil war inside her own facility. The joy that had defined her college career, the infectious smile and the swagger that captivated millions, was visibly draining away. Replaced by a hardened, cynical exterior of someone who realized they were trapped in a deeply flawed system. This incredibly toxic isolation was the final straw, setting into motion a behind-the-scenes power play that currently has the entire league holding its breath and frantically preparing for the fallout. Behind the scenes, the players' extremely powerful representation allegedly stepped in, realizing that their client's career trajectory, mental health, and multi-million-dollar brand could not afford to be permanently tied to an incompetent, highly restrictive environment. Whispers of a devastating ultimatum began echoing through the highest levels of the franchise's front office, bypassing the coaching staff entirely and going straight to ownership. The message was reportedly crystal clear. Either massive changes are made to the coaching staff and the offensive philosophy, or the franchise risks losing the biggest draw in the history of the sport as soon as she is contractually able to make a move. The leverage she holds is absolutely astronomical and virtually unprecedented for a first-year player in any professional sports league. She isn't just generating ticket sales. She is single-handedly responsible for record-breaking television ratings, massive spikes in merchandise revenue, and a complete revitalization of the local economy on game days. Bars, restaurants, and hotels around the arena depend on her presence. And the league's upcoming television rights negotiations are heavily banking on her continued viewership draw. If she were to formally demand a trade, or even threaten to sit out or play in a lucrative overseas or alternative league, the financial devastation to the franchise would be catastrophic, plunging them back into complete obscurity overnight. This section ends exactly at plunging them back into complete obscurity overnight. Send the next portion and I'll continue from that exact sentence. Continuing from the exact point where the script ended. Ownership is now allegedly in a state of absolute panic, caught between admitting their catastrophic mistake by firing a coach they recently committed to, or standing their ground and risking the permanent alienation of their golden goose. The general manager who built the current roster is facing immense pressure from all sides, realizing that traditional team-building rules simply do not apply when you draft a cultural phenomenon. You don't ask a player of this magnitude to fit your culture. You build the entire culture around the player. Rival general managers across the league are reportedly watching the chaos unfold with massive smiles, quietly calculating their salary cap space and preparing historically massive trade packages just in case the situation completely implodes and she demands an immediate exit. The league has never seen a rookie wield this much power. But they've also never seen a rookie treated with such baffling disrespect by their own organization. The situation has reached a critical mass where temporary apologies and minor playbook tweaks are no longer going to cut it. The trust between the point guard and the sidelines is completely shattered. And body language experts on television dissecting her interactions with the head coach point out that there is zero eye contact, zero collaborative communication, and an icy distance that speaks volumes. When a timeout is called now, she often stands at the edge of the huddle staring blankly at the floor while the coach furiously draws up a play on the whiteboard that everyone knows is going to stall out within 5 seconds. The fans in the arena have turned as well, heavily booing their own coaching staff during bad substitutions and loudly chanting the rookie's name when she is inexplicably left on the bench during crunch time. It has become a highly toxic spectacle, a reality television drama playing out on a basketball court, and the sheer mental toll it is taking on the young star is becoming increasingly evident. You can see the exhaustion in her post-game press conferences where she gives clipped, highly rehearsed answers to avoid generating more negative headlines, tightly gripping the microphone as she desperately tries not to let her genuine anger slip through. The media recognizes the powder keg they are sitting on, constantly probing for that one quote that will blow the entire situation wide open. She has handled the immense pressure with a level of grace that is frankly astonishing for someone her age, but everyone has a breaking point, and the rumors suggest she is standing directly on the edge of hers. The front office knows they are on a rapidly ticking clock, and they are acutely aware that the entire basketball world is judging their every move. They are no longer just managing a basketball team. This segment ends exactly at they are no longer just managing a basketball team. Send the next section and I'll continue from that exact sentence while preserving the same tone, structure, and pacing.